Hello, everybody. This is Justin Case of America Newscape, joining our friend and Bridge Master Linda Thieken, bringing you cards for thought via Bridge 2023. Hello, Linda. Welcome to America Newscape.
Well, hello. I like my introduction of Bridge Master. You'll have to really define that because it means something very different in World of Bridge. And
Well, I believe it's relative. If you have four people playing bridge, there's probably one bridge master at the table, if even self-appointed. But
exactly, I was going to say, in their own mind,
yeah,
yes.
exactly. All right, Linda. What's happening at the card tables?
Well, there's lots going on. It's tons of fun. It's very competitive. And one thing I want you to know about it is you never stop learning. That's the part I love. And I'm talking about beginning players and the pros. And the pros are amazing, but they're still learning. I remember one of the pros told me a story that a young up and coming kid, so in these days that's the 20 year olds, and he went to one of the biggest players in the game and he said, how long is it going to take me to be as good as you are? And the pro said, never.
Right.
The kid said, what? Are you kidding? And the pro said, no. He said, every day, if I'm starting here and you're down here, I'm going up and learning more as you are too. I never stop learning. Every single game, every single hand. I love that part.
Well, a lot of people don't know that I was taught to play bridge when I was 8 years old, so my sister could learn to play bridge, who was a little bit older than I was, and our parents took the time and the patience to teach us the game. And it was remarkable. And what I noticed as a young child, and I held on to as I got older, the bridge was a dance. And what I mean by a dance, it's almost a communication between partners.
That's exactly right.
And that's a fascinating thing about this game. I mean, it's as these pros learn and they change partners, the dance is altered a little bit. So,
You couldn't be more right. That is such a perfect way of saying that.
well, held on to the game as long as I could, and then lost track of the game. But I do believe that I could pick up maybe at a 90% level of where I was, and then I would just get back to that learning process. And you're exactly right. I will never know what you know as long as you continue to play because you will be on that level above me and have all that vast resource and knowledge. But can a beginning player play with an intermediate player and still have a good time and hone their game?
Oh, absolutely. That's happening in all the clubs. And that's, in fact, what the bridge clubs around the country are trying to do is encourage new beginning players. In fact, I started a class just for that reason, Beginning Bridge 1. And I was hoping to attract any age level would have been fabulous. I've taught elementary students and they were fabulous. But I was thinking more about adults who are getting ready to retire and thinking, what am I going to do now? How am I going to keep my brain sharp? What am I going to do so I'm not sitting at home going crazy? And I was hoping to, I think there's a lot of people getting ready to retire thinking exactly that. And that's who I wanted to attract. So it's been a lot of fun. At our lessons, we have a ball. The games can be more serious, but I'm getting them ready for that. But beginners, absolutely. In fact, we have a huge event here in Phoenix. We're going to combine mentors with beginning bridge players and have a typical tournament competition so that the beginners get a feel for it and they'll be comfortable when they go to a tournament because it's a little bit complicated, very different than just sitting playing with your mom and your brother and your dad at home. Like you said, it's competitive though, and it has everything to do with communication with your partner. It's its own language.
Well, it absolutely is, and and that's what, maybe why I define it as a dance.
Yeah,
So you were explaining to me that this is not social bridge you're teaching; it's you're teaching duplicate bridge. Can you kind of give
yeah.
us an overview of what is duplicate bridge?
Duplicate bridge is the most favorite for me because let's picture playing. Some people call um, party bridge or social bridge kitchen bridge. I never heard that. And when you're sitting at home and you're playing with your best friends, in fact, I played with women that were considerably older. And when you talk about bidding competitively, if your best friend's sitting next to you and you take the bid away from them just to be ornery, so they can't make a lot of points, your best friend, people playing social bridge don't think very kindly on that. But in duplicate bridge, it's the heart of the game because we play like if there's just imagine a room full of card tables. Let's say there's 20, and we have north-south pairs, so they communicate with each other. We have east-west pairs who communicate with each other, and we communicate with cards. We don't have play a heart.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to even make faces. And the pro pros never say a word because they are constantly concentrating on the game. So when you play duplicate, when I play, I like to play east-west because that couple gets up and moves to a new table, and the people at north-south sit still. I like to get up and move. And the other thing I love is I am competing against all of the other players that are playing my direction, east-west, because we are all getting exactly the same cards. So I try to teach my students, if you have a horrible hand, everybody knows what a horrible hand looks like. You sit very stoic. You sit like it looks just like the monster hand you had before, because you do not let on what's in your hand, because your opponents will suck up that, we call it unauthorized information, like a gift. They'll want to play with you every single day. So I
Wow.
like that competition. So if I get crappy cards, so do all of the people I'm competing against. I better play them smart.
Well, let's let's explain that again. Everybody, excuse me. Every table is playing the exact same cards,
Not at the same time.
but during the
So
course of the
yes, and we have handouts. We call them handouts, and the handouts show us exactly. It's just a printed piece of paper that shows you the hand. There's boards that are prepared. They used to be wooden. I have some of the older ones that were wooden. Now they're plastic. But they have the hands are pre-dealt, and each of the boards have a different number. And if you can imagine the east-west cup pair moving to the next table, well, the boards that were at the table I just played go behind me. So by the time the session, we call it a session, by the time it's over, then all of us will have played exactly the same hands. All the east west and all the north south.
now. This is certainly a good way for social bridge players. I'll call them social bridge players to hone their games and to take it back to the social tables and enjoy it that much more and teach their friends that they typically play with. You know, when you're absorbing this knowledge, when I played, we shared that knowledge with each other. We did talk at the table,
Yes,
and
yes.
we laughed, and we had a good time. And we were more than happy to make sure that our relative or person sitting next to us did not have a good experience that hand, and we would laugh about it afterwards. And that's a remarkable part of this game. Uh,
Yes,
the rules of duplicate bridge are very set in stone,
yes.
but they're easy to follow.
Yeah, they're very detailed. Some of them are easy to follow. Some of them I don't worry too much about because we'll have a director at the game, and if somebody messes up, They come, if there's a scuffle between partnerships, the director's called immediately and the director sorts it out. Otherwise, can you imagine? I mean, this is a room full of very clever, very smart people. And they all think they're the smartest in the room, by the way.
Well, I do believe if I had ever played duplicate bridge, and I never did, I would have believed I was the smartest person there. And I also believe the director would have been standing next to me the entire tournament.
Well, that is, but the only time the directors do that, because it's a timed event, is if we have one pair. They're quite a bit older. I can't imagine how many years they've been playing, probably 60 or more, but they are the slowest pair in God's creation. So then that slows up the whole room. So the director will stand right behind them and say, come on, chop, chop, move along.
But but they have a good time and they're good players, I assume.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Even the people that don't talk, they love it. They live the game. I have a lot of fun at the table. That's why I go, for the fun of it.
Well, and it's fun beforehand. It's fun. It's fun
Yes.
afterwards.
That's true. We go over the hands. You use that. My partner and I have a couple hand records from last week, and there'll be hands that we want to go over again. And it's exactly what you said. Our communication got screwed up somehow, and we want to sort that out before we play again.
Well, that's fascinating. Let's go back and talk about these classes. So, me being a social bridge player showing up to learn about duplicate bridge, how enlightening is that going to be for me?
The only difference, in fact, one of my students, I just did it for the first time for these adults I was telling you about, because I created a night class, and one of the gals is exactly who you described. She's been playing party bridge with her friends. She's been studying the game on her own, and she's been teaching them as she goes. So she came to my class to pick up some tips to take back to them. And she does play duplicate occasionally, but the friend she brought with her heard about the rules that say it's strict and it's very competitive. Her friend didn't want any part of that. She didn't want any part of duplicate. She can't wait to get home and play just for fun. And everything I taught her in that 9-week course, she would use, without a doubt.
Well, I remember my mother was a phenomenal bridge player in her own right, and she didn't enjoy duplicate bridge.
My mother took me to a duplicate bridge game, actually in Scottsdale many, many, many years ago. And when you do well, you get master points. Mom and I got one master point. I'll never forget that. And then I learned the master points are worth absolutely nothing. If anybody has S&H green stamps, they'd be worth more than master points. But the people that are incredibly competitive are crazy to get points. And they'll tell you how many points they have. I never do. I don't want points. You know why? Because remember this kid down here and the guy up here? Well, if I get too many points, I have to play with that guy up here. And I have enough of that at the club. I like to play. So it's actually stratified. So you get to play against, you compete with people in your own stratification. But it doesn't mean you don't have to play with really good players.
Now, in golf, they would call that a sandbagger. Now, everybody that plays golf understands what that means. You just don't play up to your game until you need to, till the tournament comes around.
Yeah, well, these guys know. These guys are so serious that people that are at my level, let's say I'm at a low intermediate level. I'm working my way up.
Okay.
When I get to their table, I try to be my best behavior, but you know what else I love about it is they'll help us. So one of the hardest part of the games is defense. And I need to learn now so I can turn to one of those guys. And it's not, don't think for a minute it's all men. I'll turn to those better players and say, what should I have done differently when you played that hand? And I can learn a ton. And they're very, very kind. They want us all to get better. They want us all to have a good time.
Well, that's great, and it is. It can be a defensive game, and it certainly can be an
Yes,
offensive game. But if we get back to cognitive thought, this game has so many layers. If you care to learn them,
that's right.
it's a phenomenal exercise for the mind.
There's no question about that. And once you take it seriously, I mean, I'm not making any money really. I'm just having a good time. But and nor am I that overly competitive. I want to do well for me. And every time I play, I want to get a little bit better. So if you're willing to work at it, which I tell my students after, let me tell you, after those 9 weeks, they're not ready to go anywhere right now. They need another set of courses. But they will be ready and they have to be prepared to work on it and study. It's just like a foreign language or anything else you learn that's complicated. And the other hard part is, and it's not hard, but you have to recognize you have to play. You have to play bridge. You can't read books. You can't go online and look at all the videos. There's fabulous videos. In fact, if people are interested, there's wonderful tutorials. In fact, the national organization is ACBL, American Contract Bridge League. That's what we all belong to. And their website's fabulous. People that are listening now that are even just curious can go on the website and get a little bit of a feel for it.
Well, and Linda, you have a background in teaching and education, and that can
Yes.
only benefit you. Can you talk about a little bit of that? That can only benefit you in helping to convey this knowledge to others.
You know, I do. I was a high school math teacher, and math is not easy for all the students. And in that case, I wanted all my students to be successful. So I really spent the vast majority of my time learning about how people learn. And back in those days, they didn't have a clue how people learn.
Yeah.
So teaching and learning were my top priorities. So one of the things I learned, which I did not see a lot of bridge teachers using, in fact, I just went to a class and it was all PowerPoint, and he talked and he was fabulous. For my level player, it was fine. If I had done that with the beginners, it just I don't think they would have wanted to stay. I think we've all sat through lectures and we're thinking, my goodness, when's this going to end? So my primary goal was to make the class as student-oriented and detailed as possible so that they were engaged. Students have to be engaged. You can't just tell them something and then expect them to walk out of the room and be able to remember that when they don't have a file in their brain to put it in. We literally fill a toolbox, just like you did in my math class. We start with arithmetic, and then we'd add the skills of algebra as you go up the ladder. And that's exactly how you need to teach bridge. And they appreciate it. We do a lot of vocabulary. Bridge has its own language. I didn't want my students to get in a bridge game and be uncomfortable or feel like, hey, what's going on here? It wasn't like this in my class. I had a great time with Linda, and we could all talk. And that was imperative to me. I told them that all the time. That was my number one goal. I want them, the first time they sit down to a serious game, I want them to know as much or more than the other people at the table about what the etiquette is, about how you do things, when you talk, when you don't talk. And they do. They picked it up immediately.
Well, I've always stated, having done a lot of coaching,
Hmm.
teaching and coaching, they have two similar, two things that are very, very important. It's communication. And what I always used to say when trying to teach a 13-year-old how to hit a curveball, you better have 10 different ways to explain it to them because 9 of them won't make any sense.
That's exactly right. You've said that perfectly too. That was what helped me. People learn in very, very different ways.
Well, and the burden is on the coach. The burden is on the teacher to
Yes,
communicate.
that's exactly right. I have a wonderful mentor who helped me get started on this beginning bridge. She's in her 90s. Actually, I didn't tell you, we have a lot of players in their 90s.
Wow.
But she probably taught for 65, 70 years. She raised her kids on, after her divorce, on teaching bridge lessons and going on cruises. You can go on bridge cruises, and like she would have been the director. She took her grandchildren and her children, so they all learned how to play bridge. Where was I going with this?
Oh, you're talking about your mentor in communications.
Oh, yes. And one of the biggest things she taught me was that I was afraid to tell people how difficult the game was. And she goes, oh no, Linda. She said, you have to be right up front from the beginning. Some of them will latch right on and it'll be perfect for them. And others, it won't. And they need to feel okay about that. They just need to find something else to keep their brain going. Maybe bridge isn't it.
Well, that's true. If it's misery, they don't need to be there, but it doesn't have to be. And
Oh no.
there's no shame in not knowing. You know, it reminds me of my mother's partner and best friend back in the early 70s had a stroke.
Yes.
And although she could not talk, her bridge game was immaculate. And even though she could not talk, she would take whatever time necessary to teach me to be a better player with a smile, always with a smile. What a
Yeah.
gracious, wonderful lady she was. And I remember
Yes.
her that way.
I've had several mentors like that, and you're right. And I think it's true of the whole community as a whole, really, just to help people get better, and then you enjoy the game more. And you don't. First thing I tell my students is, hey, when you make a mistake, oh, I wish I had a journal of mistakes I made. They're outrageous, but it won't be my last. I'll
Right.
tell you. If I don't make 5 mistakes during a session, I'm like, Yahoo! I did awesome.
And then you
So
get
you're right about that. You have to get used to that. You are going to make mistakes, and that is exactly how you learn.
absolutely. You know, another friend and I do a series, and that's what it's all about. It's basically embracing those mistakes and celebrating them so you can learn going forward.
Yes. I
And the
just
cool,
saw a T-shirt that said exactly that.
well,
Mistakes are my joy.
yeah,
That's good.
mistakes are us. No, but
That's right.
what you need to recognize is you're going to make a mistake that you didn't even know existed in the world, and you should celebrate that when that moment happens.
Right. And when you begin, you make mistakes, just like you said. You have no idea what mistakes you make, and you aren't ready to learn that mistake. You need to build your game a little bit more. But that was one of the things I could see in my learning curve is we got so we could recognize our mistakes. I was kind of proud of that. Oh, I screwed that up.
I
And,
remember.
and they wouldn't have told me what I did wrong. They would have just, kind of patted me on the head and said, go on to the next table, Linda. Good job.
I remember when I learned bridge. My partner was my father, and we played against my sister and my mother. And I was a pretty adept pinochle player. I learned to play pinochle at 5, 6. By the time I was 8, I was a very adept pinochle player. And my dad took me aside and he said, all you need to focus on is where are the cards. He'd go, after the bidding, I want you to take a moment and perceive where those cards lay. And he was so right, and it made me a much better player of the hand. The bidding, that took me quite a while. But
Well,
there's just so many
it was
different
just,
yeah, exactly. But there's so many different ways that we learn. But even for the young, it can be enjoyable. We enjoyed it. We enjoyed beating my sister and my mother when we did, and we laughed. And I remember laughing. It was just we used to play pinochle as a family, but when we moved to bridge, it was just so much more enjoyable for all of us, I think.
well, it's more of a challenge is why.
Yeah.
And that's what, there's 52 cards in the deck, that never changes. and there's 4 suits, and they all have 13 cards. I have one of my teachers who's one of those 90-year-olds. He's like, Linda, it's not a hard game. You only have to count to 13.
Exactly.
I'm like, but on the other hand, I agree with you because being a math teacher, I bought, in fact, I should show you, I bought little tiny decks of cards so they could line them out in front of them. The students could see their own, and we could talk about the 13 cards and play with the cards a little bit. Very different than me putting it on the board, and it helps a ton. I think my students, I'm very proud of them actually. I just think they learned a ton in that 9 weeks. So I'm excited about the next one because there are bidding conventions that need to know before they can go on. And I have a couple more to teach them.
Well, that's an exciting opportunity for them. And every time they pick up a new convention and they're speaking that language or dancing that dance with their partners, they'll be that much better. But I have
Yes,
to imagine that you, intermediate masters or whatever you are, and your partner,
not a master of anything, Justin.
it's fun to say. It's fun to say. Well, an intermediate, not too sucky master, and your
Okay,
partner probably play 8 or 9 conventions. What happens when you are not speaking the same convention at the same time?
then you get in an argument with your partner. I do. We go back and forth. And then we look at it later, like I told you on the hand record. We clearly disagree, or there would not have been any confusion. And we always keep at it until we come to a point of agreement because
Wow.
we have to
Wow.
for the next time happens. And did I mention how many hands, individual hands there are? Take 52 to the 13th power.
Exactly.
So some of the hands she gets all excited about. I am not, I don't, I'm done with the conventions I have. There's a million more, let me tell you. And I tell her, could we just let this go? This hand is never, ever going to come up again. There's like 20 zillion million different hands. Let's go with them. And it is a numbers game in all regards. I can tell you how many 12-point hands there are, 13-point hands. I can tell you the odds that the card will be on the left or the right. One of my students went, "Oh my God, I didn't know there was so much math in this game."
Yeah, visualize the cards because they all have a number on
Yes,
them.
exactly. And you can figure out how many points your partner has. You just have to pay attention.
Well, and the other thing that I learned young, if there's too many points for the bidding that transpired, the distribution must be nasty out there. Beware of that distribution. And what we're talking about, because bridge, there's trumping. So, singletons, only one of a suit, and voids of suits have their own point values.
See, those are words my student knows. They
Uh,
know those words.
well,
And a
exactly.
doubleton.
Doubleton, yeah, exactly. And there's just there's something laying in the weeds for you when you go to play that hand or when you go try and bid that hand. And that's another fascinating part of the game. And we can sit and we can analyze and we can believe that we see what's out there, and then the, the god of bridge just slaps us in the face.
That's when you're playing the hand and you're 100%, like you said, 100% sure this is on your left. The bidding made it very clear to any idiot.
Right.
And that's when I get in trouble because I look at the guy that had the king and I'm not supposed to talk at all, and I let him know you are not supposed to have that king. I'm not very happy right now because I'm going set. Hope you're happy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had part of my family would actually take the time to point out to them in social bridge that they were idiots. You're just an idiot, and they tended to be looking right at me like it was my fault.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I seriously doubt that. But I will tell you something my girlfriend reminded me of, my partner. her life's been topsy-turvy. And we'd set up a game. She's had to cancel so much. So I asked her, are you going to have to cancel again? She goes, I am dreaming of being able to go to the club and just play bridge.
Yeah.
So it's your brain's so engaged, you can't remember all the rest of that garbage out there.
Well, it's therapeutic for her. It's actually therapeutic, and it's helping her with what she's dealing with.
Incredibly. Another thing about bridge, you'll never be lonely. There's bridge clubs everywhere. And they talk all the same language.
I I remember I was waiting to go into the St. Mary's Hospital at Rochester, Minnesota. And people need to realize Rochester, Minnesota is like 5 pounds of ice or 5 feet of ice, and everything is built on top of it. But I opened up the little thing I had in the hotel before I went over to the hospital, and there was like 40 bridge games going on every day, and it was all this duplicate bridge. So it was amazing to me. And this was, if you think about all those doctors and all those nurses and all those people in miserable weather in Rochester, I apologize to you. If you believe you have nice weather that one day in July, it doesn't make up for December, January, February, and March.
And the snow in April. Don't forget the snow in April.
Oh, snow in the April. The ice doesn't start melting until May, but bridge was important to that community, and that's how they endured that, and that's why they didn't move to nice places like Arizona and California and Texas and Florida. But it was part of the community, and it was
Yes.
as card playing was part of my upbringing and part of my world, and it's neat to be able to share that with people. And I really want to encourage people, no matter what your level is. I have confidence in Miss Thieken to be able to make it more entertaining for you and enjoyable for you while she teaches you something. And
It's true.
there's
We
no
laugh a lot.
there's no failure in trying to better yourself or trying to learn something.
It's a very respectful endeavor. As an adult, adults do not like to deal with things they're not totally comfortable with. And the ones I've had in class have been amazing. They don't like to be wrong. And when they stick their neck out and try to learn something brand new to them, you have to hand it to them. And they'll love it.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, glow in the experience.
Yes, yes. They're doing something productive. And there's no question it's helping your brain. Sometimes you feel like if I had a brain, that'd be nice. Helpful.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's just we're reverting back to when we were small children and we brought that drawing home, and our mothers put that drawing on the refrigerator. This is the same premise. Be proud of what you do and learn and accomplish.
Yes. I'm a little bit like that in the class with these beginners. If they get something, I'm really excited.
Gold stars for all. Gold stars
Yes,
for all.
yes, yes, yes. We did great. But I was sitting there next to one of the gals at the table, and I said, can you believe how lucky we are? And she looked at me and she said, honestly, I can't. I mean, everybody gets along, everybody has a good time, and we really do laugh a lot. And I worry about when they have to go into the serious game.
Oh well, there's directors for that. Don't worry about it, people. Just imagine you will be accepted better than I would have ever been, and I want everybody to know I was never invited to go. But I would like to play with some of these hotshots that believe they understand psychology and body language. That would be a lot of fun. I would go back to my
Yes,
poker playing days,
yes,
and they
that's
could.
exactly what pros look like. Poker players. They don't talk, they don't look, they don't do anything. How boring is that?
Well, and then I would be such a rotten human being that I would mutter under my breath between hands, "Oh, I love these tells I'm getting. I'm getting these tells. I love it. I love it. I can't believe these people ever win." I don't know who I'd say that to. I think I would probably say that to myself. And then I'd call the director. I've been
Yes,
bad.
exactly.
I've been bad,
Yes.
director.
It's a gentleman's game.
And
We got rules.
gentlewomen. Well, ladies and gentlemen. Gentlemen's. That needs to go. That's antiquated. This is for good people to have a good time.
You're
Well,
reminding me of my father-in-law when he played. He was very competitive, and my family was incredibly competitive, but they weren't rude and mean. And he was 6'7". He probably weighed 280 pounds, and if he was going to set you, he'd take that card and he'd slam it down on the table, the whole table. And the first time he did that, I thought, this is how you people play cards. This is fun for you. Scared the crap out of me. I'll never forget it, and I'll never forgive him. I thought that was the most unrespectful thing, unsportsmanlike conduct of anybody I ever saw in my life.
well, and I did have the opportunity to meet your father-in-law. He was a remarkable man living in a remarkable time, and he spoke in a voice so deep that the room might vibrate if he raised his voice. And it was not intentional. That was just he was a remarkable persona,
Oh,
and I've never met anybody like him.
that could very well be true, but I think there's a lot of men that think winning is everything.
Well, yeah, I will cut some slack of those World War II vets because it was to them.
Yeah,
It
and he
really
was
was.
exactly and a drill sergeant. You didn't mention that.
Oh God, that's a nightmare waiting to happen. And I did not know that, but it makes perfect sense.
Oh, yes.
So, all right, Sergeant. Okay, all right. We're off a topic now. What I'd like you to invite everybody to your classes. We're going to provide the information and the read more of this video of how to get more information and the website,
Okay.
which is bridge2023.com. Invite everybody and give us a parting thought here so we don't take up everybody's time. So take it, do it.
You mean in terms of trying to hook people into playing bridge and
I
telling them how
just
much fun?
Well, you can do that, or just invite them out. I think they should actually
Oh,
be looky loos. They should come and
yeah.
make that leap.
Oh, you're exactly right. And if they're really concerned, I've told several people that popped in, they could just come to class and watch. So they get a feel for what it's like. They can get a feel for us having fun. They can get a feel for us having to work hard and being serious about what we're learning. But I don't think they'd ever be intimidated. I think that I wish I could get them to come to the class and watch us. I think they'd love it. Just think when I hand them that little tiny deck of cards and they get to lay them out and, like a little kid. Count to 13. Count to 13.
Count to 13. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a lot more complicated than that. And I would just, it's a remarkable game, and I would tell everybody it is the epitome of card games. Just because there's so much you can learn if you want to, but you don't have to.
Right. You could sit at home in the kitchen and have cocktails, eat,
Okay.
drink, have a fabulous time, and love the game. My mother did that for her entire life, and she was a fabulous bridge player, and they
Yeah.
had a great time.
Well, and we talk about conventions. I had one. Some old fart named Gorin wrote these books that I read when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, and I still would play with those conventions if I could find a partner that would could remember the beauty of those conventions. But lo and behold, these experts came along and they needed to talk different languages and do the
Yes.
tango, and while me and Goran were doing the box step, they're out there doing the tango and
Well,
salsa
let me
dancing.
tell you, a serious foreign player, and he is the one that brought it to America. That's true. And that's many, many years ago. The play of the hand hasn't changed in the last 150 years or so. The defense of the game hasn't changed in the last 50 years. You can buy books from the 70s. I have them. The only thing that's changed is the bidding, and that is between you and your partner. And I contend anyone who is a serious foreign bridge player his rules could beat anybody in my club if they play with a partner. It's all about partner communication, just like you said.
Yeah, it is, and that's the beauty of finding a compatible partner. We're not necessarily talking about duplicate, but just people you enjoy sitting at the table with, and learning how to laugh, and that's where your class is
Yeah.
going to be valuable. Teach me to enjoy this. Teach me to laugh, and we'll all have a good time. Well, Linda, I'm going to let you go because we could talk about bridge too much. I'd like you to promise to come back. Maybe we could get a student on here with you, and we can talk about where we're going. And I could,
Probably won't be the lady that doesn't want to play duplicates.
and I could, yeah, I'll promise not to corrupt their thoughts. But no, it is interesting. I think there's a lot of people that can feel better about where they are with their game today. If they're thinking about taking a leap, even if it's not in metropolitan Phoenix, we want to encourage them to do that.
The website I told you about, ACBL, you can get a link and look for classes in your area. They've done a lot of work, put a lot of money in getting teachers prepared because we need it. It is an activity for some fairly old people. So we need to get this younger generation up and going, or it won't last.
Well, it will only benefit them because they're going to. This is critical thinking. I mean, in itself, you need to be able to solve problems, recognize situations, and things like that. It's not handed you by a Google search, but I bet you can probably search on Google how to play a specific hand, and somebody will take the time to put together an
Yeah.
answer for you.
And the thing about, okay, we'll talk about this another time, but you have to recognize once you get that hand sorted out, you'll play against different opponents next time you get it, so it changes everything.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the beauty of it. It's just so layered. It is so layered.
Exactly.
And the dance has changed. Yeah, well, let's just say the dance. The dance will change as we go into the next day of playing this not intimidating game, but this layered game. The dance will change
Yeah.
a little bit. All right, everybody. Hey, this has been
Okay, thanks.
this has been Justin Case and Linda Thieken bringing you Bridge 2023. Thanks for joining us. Remember, additional information and links are provided in this video. Read more. Today is the day to subscribe to this channel.